Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing another Add of the Beginning review. Today we're going to be looking at arc number 5, which is chapters 19 and 20. And I could have just put this together with the previous arc, but I think that the storytelling was different enough that it warranted being its own arc. But it's just a transition over to the next part of the story, which is probably much more important, right? So, yeah, this is by Masami Yuki, by Tetsuya Kasahara at the art. It's published by Panini in Mexico, and here in the States you can get it from Titan Comics. This arc is in the 4th volume. It's at the end of the 4th volume, right there, right? And so it's out in the U.S. and in England. I think that's where they're from. Titan Comics is from, so it's available, worldwide. And the demographic here is seinen. The genres here are sci-fi and action. It does not have an adaptation at this point because season 1 only covers up to the end of the second arc of the story. And the rating for this is 3.5 out of 5. Mostly because it's not that interesting. It's pretty short, so nothing much happens. I mean, it's still 80 pages of conversation, more or less, but it's not super exciting, if that makes sense. So there really isn't too much to get hyped for. And the premise here is that Dr. Lolo appears to talk to the boys, and a conversation is had between them, and that's basically all there is to it. So basically the plot line here starts with the boys and Makoto at school eating in the cafeteria. Well, they call that canteen. That's actually pretty common across the world. I think it's just the US that calls it a cafeteria, because when I was in Turkey, we would go down to the canteen to eat. In Mexico, you go down to, like, the canteen as well. And I guess in Japan, the same holds true, right? So I guess it's just the US that calls it a cafeteria. But they're eating there, and Tenma asks Hiroshi, he's like, Hiroshi, do you have a problem with me? Is it like it's just really crazy how it just kind of out of nowhere, right? And what he's getting at is that Hiroshi changes the names of things all the time, right? So Tenma gives it a pretty scientific, like numerical designation. Like, the cat is called F14 and Adam is called A106, right? And, stuff like that. And then Hiroshi goes ahead and gives it like human names, right? Like he gives them proper names, right? Not just numerical designations. And he does this a lot to everything, right? And Tenma's kind of annoyed by this, right? And Hiroshi initially kind of is like, no, I don't do that. And then they think about it a little bit, and he's like, oh, shit, never mind, I do that, sorry. And he kind of swears to never do it again, but of course this is ridiculous because he's going to do it again immediately, right? But it's a pretty interesting kind of moment for them as characters to kind of interact here. And then, while they're still doing this, the boys from Lab 1 show up, right? And they basically just try to bully the boys. It almost feels like a Big Bang Theory, like a Big Bang Theory episode, right? Where, the boys are chatting and then someone else comes to annoy Sheldon. It has very similar vibes to that. It's pretty funny. Basically, Hiroshi and Tenma managed to win the exchange, at least in my opinion. And Moriya shows up to try to talk to them, but Tenma blows him off. He's like, I don't need to talk to you, whatever, like, screw you. Which is pretty funny because there's like this connection between Moriya and Dr. Lolo, and everyone seems to know it except for Tenma, and it's pretty funny. Then the boys come back to Lab 7, and they're working on A107 or A107, which is the next A series or A10 series robot, and this one is going to be called Uran or Uran. I don't know how to say it because Ran actually ends up helping them a lot with designing this character, right? And so it basically comes off as a more feminine character, and you can see on cover 5 what she looks like, right? So there you go. It's really cute. I really like that robot, but they're basically working on this robot as a kind of start to the transition to the next part of the story. And as they're doing this, Dr. Lolo shows up, and she apologizes to Ran for attacking her, right? Because she sent Mars after Ran. She gives Ran a special tool set that Ran is very happy about. She's like, okay, I forgive you immediately. And Hiroshi's mad. But he, they managed to kind of patch it up a bit. Then she tells them, I'm here because I'm interested in your robot. A106 is special. He did something to Mars, that I want to know about. And she explains that during their robot fighting match, Adam sent out a burst of information, and that she thinks it was a cracking system, right? Basically a hacking virus, right? And that she wants information on it because it's making Mars act weird, right? And Hiroshi's like, no, that's not what happened at all. It was a conversation between two highly intelligent AI. And she doesn't believe him. But, I mean, we know that that's the case, right? But the boys haven't really managed to figure that out properly. Hiroshi just kind of assumes that because that's what he thinks that creatures of a certain intelligence would want to do, which, I mean, I guess it's true, right? Maybe that is what humans did when they met Neanderthals, right? I mean, it certainly happened that way because we have Neanderthal DNA, right? But he assumes that this is what happened, and he's right. But I feel like there's a certain lack of scientificness to this idea because Hiroshi hasn't really tested that that's actually true, right? And Dr. Lolo gets a bit upset. She's like, dude, what are you talking about? And she thinks it's stupid as hell, but she allows it and she leaves. And Uran is introduced properly. And she's called Uran because she has a U-shaped antenna that sends out muons. And muons they're kind of like tachyons, or they're kind of like, I think they're actually more like electrons, right? So electrons are, a charge, and they have a very insignificant amount of weight. Muons are 100 times as heavy as electrons, if I remember correctly. I had to research this to know what the hell they were talking about. And they have certain properties that are pretty helpful, right? They're kind of unstable. And so this creates a good way of working with stuff for the sake of this robot, right? I think it's mostly technobabble, but I think that there is something to what they're saying that makes sense, right? Like if we were to ever make ion impulse jets, right? You'd probably have to be with something like that, right? Because I'm not sure how you could do it with like traditional means. But I'm not super versed in physics, right? So I'm not really sure, but it's kind of in that realm. And so that's the U-shaped antenna for the muons, plus Rand, because Rand helped design all of her elements, or the aesthetic look of her. And so they called her Uran. And then we get a different scene where Aaron Brenner gets invited to the World Robot Battling competition. And, well, that's basically the end of the arc here. So it was really short. And this is kind of transitioning us away from, like, the introduction saga to the, like, proper Astro Boy saga. At least I think so. So, yeah. In terms of characters, Dr. Lolo finally talks to people. And, of course, Uran is introduced. And we get to see a lot more of her in the next arc. So I'll talk about her a lot. In terms of world building, we get limits of the AI, how far they can go, what the limitations of their communications are and stuff. And it's kind of explained very vaguely, not enough. So it's kind of hard to really say too much, right? But, I mean, it's a pretty common subject nowadays. So, I mean, you could probably say that anything that applies IRL right now probably makes sense for the technology that they're working on. Because I don't think that it's significantly different from what, is common now, which is just create an algorithm, dump a bunch of information in, and then force the algorithm to learn to do things. Right? And then just have it spit out answers, right? I mean, that's basically what most AI essentially is nowadays, right? So I think it all works, like, properly, but, this was made 5 or 6 years ago, so it's not exactly the same. And I don't know the scientific background for these creators, right? So, yeah, but I mean, it still works out pretty well. In terms of artwork and fan service, it's still fan service. And the artwork is good, but there's no action scenes, so it's not super exciting. And like I said, rating-wise, it's a 3.5 out of 5. It's good stuff, but there really isn't too much stuff that like draws attention. This is just a very short but meaningful transition chapter. Like all of this stuff is important for the characters, not necessarily important for like the sake of having fun, if that makes sense. Like from the perspective of a reader, it's not really fun parts of the story. They're just kind of like things that need to happen properly, right? And so yeah, it's good, but not amazing. And that's all I have to say. So hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later.